I never expected to be humiliated at my own sister's engagement party. The lights were warm, the smiles were rehearsed, and her voice carried easily when she laughed and said, "I was just admin at a courthouse." People chuckled. My chest burned, but I stayed quiet like I always did. Then her fiancé turned toward me, studying my face like he'd seen it somewhere before. "So, what do you actually do?" he asked. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I said one word, and what happened next wasn't loud or dramatic, but it changed how my family looked at me forever. My name is Varity, and for as long as I can remember, my family has loved neat labels. The kind you can say quickly at dinner, the kind that don't invite follow-up questions. My sister Evelyn was always the impressive one, ambitious, charismatic, the kind of person who could walk into a room and make it orbit around her. And me, I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who worked at the courthouse. That phrase followed me everywhere. Thanksgiving tables, birthday dinners, casual phone calls. "So, you're still doing admin work?" they'd ask, smiling like they were being kind. I'd nod. "Yeah, still there." And the conversation would move on. What they didn't see was how carefully I'd learned to stay invisible around them. Not because I was ashamed, but because every time I tried to explain, their eyes glazed over. I learned early that my accomplishments made people uncomfortable, especially Evelyn. So I softened my words, rounded the edges, and let them believe the smaller version of me, because it kept the peace. At home, the pattern never changed. Evelyn talked. Everyone listened. My parents leaned in when she spoke about her work, her milestones, her plans. When I spoke forks, scraped plates, it wasn't cruelty, it was habit. And habits are hard to break. There was only one person who ever looked at me differently, my cousin Lily. She noticed the late nights, the way I carried myself, the way my phone buzzed at odd hours. She knew the truth even when I never said it out loud. Sometimes she'd squeeze my hand under the table, reminding me I wasn't invisible everywhere. I told myself I didn't need their validation, but that was only half true, because every time Evelyn laughed at my courthouse job, something inside me tightened. By the time her engagement party came around, I already knew how the night would go. I didn't expect respect. I didn't expect curiosity. What I did unexpect was to be cornered by a question that refused to let the lie survive another minute. The engagement party was exactly what you'd expect from Evelyn. Picture perfect and carefully designed to impress. String lights stretched across the backyard, like a stage sunset, white flowers everywhere. I arrived early because that's what I always did. Before I could even set my purse down, my mom handed me a stack of napkins. "Can you help over there?" she said, already turning away. By the time guests started arriving, I'd already refilled ice twice and wiped down a counter no one had used yet. I was used to this role. Useful, quiet, out of the way. Then Evelyn arrived. She stepped out of the car, glowing, a diamond catching the light. People gathered around her instantly. Her fiancé Daniel followed close behind, polished, calm, smiling. He shook hands, thanked people, listened more than he spoke. At first, he barely looked at me. Evelyn made sure everyone knew how successful he was. Big wins, big payments, big numbers. My parents beamed. I stood near the edge of the crowd, watching the same story I'd seen my whole life play out again. Then Evelyn noticed me. "Come here," she said, waving me over like an afterthought. "I don't think everyone's met my sister." She wrapped an arm around my shoulder and smiled wide. "This is She works at the courthouse." A few polite nods. "She's just admin," Evelyn added, laughing. "Keeps things organized. Answers, phones, You know how it is. Someone chuckled. I felt the familiar heat rise in my chest. This wasn't new. This was just louder. But Daniel didn't laugh. He was watching me now. Really watching. His smile faded just slightly. His eyes searched my face like he was flipping through memories. Dinner was announced. I took a seat near the end, exactly where I was expected to be. Toasts were made. Then Evelyn raised her glass again. Some people argue important cases, she said, nodding toward Daniel. And some people answer phones. Right, Varity. Her eyes dared me to react. That's when Daniel turned and looked straight at me. Wait, he said slowly. Varity, what exactly do you do at the courthouse? The table went still. Every eye shifted in my direction. And suddenly, there was nowhere left to hide. For a moment, no one spoke. The question hung there, awkward and exposed. I felt every pair of eyes on me, the weight of years pressing into my shoulders. I looked down at my hands. I could hear the low hum of the outdoor lights. In that pause, 1,000 small moments rushed in. Every holiday where I'd been asked to help set up. Every dinner where my work was summarized into a single word. Every time I'd chosen silence. I remembered standing in my apartment late at night, rereading notes for another long day, knowing none of it would ever be mentioned at this table. I realized something then. I hadn't been protecting them by staying quiet. I'd been protecting the version of me they preferred, the smaller one. Across from me, Evelyn was smiling too hard, her jaw tight. My mother stared at her plate. My father reached for his glass and stopped halfway. Daniel was still watching me, not impatient, not mocking, just waiting. The old instinct told me to soften it, to keep the peace one more time. But another feeling rose up, calm and steady. Clarity. If I spoke now, the truth would land. If I stayed silent, the lie would keep living, and I would keep shrinking to make room for it. This wasn't about embarrassing my sister. It was about refusing to disappear anymore. I straightened slightly in my chair and set my glass down. The sound was small, but it cut through the quiet. My heartbeat slowed. The fear I'd carried for years loosened its grip. I looked at Daniel first, then at my parents, then finally at Evelyn. And I knew, whatever came next, there was no going back. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I said one word, Judge. It landed softly, but the effect was immediate. The air shifted. Conversations died mid-breath. Forks paused halfway to mouths. For a second, no one moved. My mother's face drained of color. My father blinked hard, his hand tightening around his glass. Evelyn laughed. It came out sharp and brittle. Oh, my God, she said, waving a hand. Very funny. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Daniel. He hadn't laughed. His expression had changed. Not confusion, but recognition finally snapping into place. He leaned back slowly. Judge, he repeated quietly. Then his eyes widened just a fraction. Varity Cole, he said. The courthouse, downtown. No one breathed. You presided over my case last year, he went on. The one with the corporate dispute. I stood in front of you more than once. The silence deepened. Evelyn's smile froze. What are you talking about? She snapped. She works admin. She answers phones. Daniel didn't look at her. I know what admin work looks like, he said calmly. And I know what a judge looks like. He looked back at me. You were fair, direct. You listened. That's why I remember. My father finally found his voice. You're a judge, he asked, disbelief thick in his tone. Since when? 3 years, I said evenly. My mother shook her head. But you said you were assisting someone. I was, I replied. At the beginning, no one ever asked after that. That was when it hit them. The realization that the story they'd been repeating hadn't been corrected, not because it was true, but because it was convenient. Evelyn pushed her chair back. This is ridiculous, she said. You let everyone believe you were admin. Who does that? I met her gaze. I didn't lie. I stopped correcting you. Her face flushed. You did this on purpose, she snapped. You waited until my engagement party to embarrass me. I shook my head. You embarrassed yourself. I answered a question you asked in front of everyone. She turned to Daniel, her voice rising. You knew she was a judge and didn't tell me? I didn't know, he said. I never connected Judge Cole to your sister. You never said her last name. You never let her speak. That landed harder than anything I could have said. My grandmother reached across the table and squeezed my wrist. I always knew, she said softly. Evelyn stood up so abruptly, her chair scraped against the stone. This is my night, she said, her voice shaking now. And you've ruined it. You always find a way to make it about you. I stayed seated. I didn't say anything, I replied calmly, until you mocked me. Until you reduced me to a joke. That was a choice. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she had no comeback. Daniel stood slowly. Evelyn, he said carefully, the way you spoke to her. She cut him off. Don't. You're supposed to be on my side. I'm on the side of the truth, he said. And I don't know how I missed this. How I let you talk about your own sister like that. That was the moment it broke. Evelyn looked around the table and realized the orbit had shifted. No one was laughing. No one was defending her. This is unbelievable, she whispered. You think you're better than me now? I shook my head. No. I think I finally stopped pretending to be less. She stared at me, something raw and frightened behind her anger. Then she turned and walked inside. Daniel hesitated, then looked at me. There was conflict in his eyes, but also respect. I need to talk to her, he said quietly. I nodded. After they left, the table stayed silent. My mother finally reached for my hand. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, her voice small. I didn't pull away, because every time I tried to be seen, I said, you looked away. No one argued with that, and in that stillness, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not triumph, but relief, like I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying for years. The next morning, I woke up to a strange sense of calm. Then the messages started. Missed calls, long texts, clumsy apologies. Around midday, Daniel knocked on my door. He looked tired. We sat at opposite ends of my couch. He didn't make excuses. I can't unsee it now, he said. The way she spoke to you, the way everyone let it happen. I nodded. I don't know what this means for us yet, he admitted, but I know I can't ignore it. A few days later, Evelyn showed up unannounced. No makeup, hair pulled back. I was scared, she said finally. Of being ordinary, of being second. I believed her. I'm not here to compete, I told her. I never was. She nodded slowly, like she was hearing that for the first time. Nothing was fixed overnight, but my parents started asking questions and waiting for answers. Lily smiled at me across dinner tables. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself at all. I used to think staying quiet was the same as being kind. I was wrong. Silence didn't protect anyone. It just taught people how small they could make me. The truth is, you don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself just to keep the peace. If you've ever been there, hiding your growth so others feel comfortable, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, hit subscribe. You deserve to be seen.